Hello, everyone. Tonight, we are walking beneath the shadowed branches of a Cretaceous forest where nothing screams, nothing shrieks, and even the most massive creatures seem to exhale secrets instead of sounds. You hear a whisper almost like the breeze brushing through ferns, but it's not the wind. It's something alive, something huge, something with lungs older than language. You probably won't survive. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You shuffle along the edge of the fern bed boots, damp with leaf juice, trying to make out the source of the hissing noise. But this isn't a jungle of roars. The animals here don't announce themselves with the chest-thrashing pride of a lion or the theatrical screams of Hollywood raptors. The sounds you hear are soft, persistent, and nasal like someone sighing under their breath forever. Up ahead, half-shadowed by tree ferns and twilight, you see it. A crest-headed shape. It doesn't bellow. It exhales. The whisper comes again, not through the mouth but from the nostrils. Long, tubular, widened, just behind the eyes, those openings flex slightly as the sound curls out. The air hums low and polite, barely louder than your own breath. And yet, other shadows stir in response. It hits you slowly. They're talking, all of them. The forest is full of dinosaurs, and they're whispering. Historians still debate whether this was communication courtship or some type of ritual breathwork, but one thing's clear. These weren't the monstrous screams of T-Rex cinema. These were private messages shaped through air and restraint. You crouch behind a cycad barely moving, watching a hadrosaur lower its neck toward the ground. Nostrils pointed downward and emit a sigh so low it makes the ferns shiver. A response, another sigh, shorter, sharper. Somewhere else, a rhythmic puffing syncopated like jazz played on hollow bamboo. It's not music, it's not language, but it's coordinated, intentional. Here's the odd bit: when paleontologists first unearthed the nasal passages of Lambeosaurus, they thought it might have drowned because the bones in its skull looked like waterlogged plumbing. Turns out those loops were likely acoustic resonators. Built for breath, not roar. You move again slowly, and your boot presses into something soft and round. A mushroom. A puffball. It releases a tiny cloud of spores and you cough, loudly. The entire forest goes still. The whispers stop. You freeze, breath held, and you realize what you've just done. You've roared in a place built for silence. Every predator in earshot now knows where you are. In this world, the loud don't last long. The dinosaurs, though masters of quiet, resume their hush. They don't run. They don't panic. They whisper. There's a theory that some of these nasal sounds could travel farther than vocalizations. Longer wavelengths, deeper pulses. Picture a giant animal sighing through a trumpet attached to its face, the note curling low under the trees, bypassing leaves and rain, and even the occasional volcanic ash cloud. You inch closer to one of them. Its breath smells like wet ferns and rotting pine cones. It doesn't flinch. Just exhales through its nostrils again, sending out a breath you feel more than hear. And you think this forest isn't quiet. It's layered, like whispers in a library built by giants. Above you, a bird-like creature, not quite bird, not quite lizard, perches on a dead tree and mimics the nasal sigh imperfectly. It sounds like a child imitating a wind instrument with a straw. The big one below shifts its weight unimpressed. The sun dips low red and blinking through the canopy. Shadows grow longer. Insects take over the high-frequency audio band. The whisperers stay low. Another puff. Another breathy tone. And behind you, somewhere far too close, something larger mimics the whisper, but wrong. You can tell it's a predator because it doesn't care about precision. Its nasal exhale is broken, more like a snort. You press into the foliage and wait, breath-held, lungs aching. And here's something funny. Well, tragic funny. One of the earliest fossilized nasal passages ever misidentified as a sound chamber turned out to be a crushed skull. Paleontology, folks, where half of what you think you know is just a really old oops. Still in this forest, these creatures knew better. They didn't need big roars or chest drums. They had sighs, whispers, echoes that bent through the air like smoke. You follow a whisper trail, ducking low beneath a rotting log, your own breath matching the tempo around you. It's oddly calming, like falling asleep to the rhythmic hiss of a faraway train. And here's your first joke of the night. If you were a dinosaur therapist, this forest would be your office. And every patient would be saying the same thing: I don't want to talk about it. I just want to breathe. And breathe they do. You sit still as the sky turns bruised purple. The last breath you hear that night doesn't come from one creature but a whole family of them. Each one sighing in harmony, like monks chanting in a cave you'll never find on any map. There's no applause, no grand finale, just an exhale. Warm, ancient, and woven with intent. And tomorrow, if you're lucky, you'll wake up to it again. If you're not, well, at least you didn't scream. You wake with your face pressed into leaf mold and your ears full of breath. It's not your own? The air vibrates around you, a soft chorus of inhaled and exhaled messages. You blink dew from your lashes and sit up slow as moss, watching something impossibly tall glide through the undergrowth like a church bell on legs. It's not roaring, it's humming through its face. You squint at the skull. It's bizarre. Like someone melted a saxophone and then let a child glue it to a dinosaur. A crest arches from the snout coils behind the eyes and loops into hollow tunnels before disappearing into the skull. This is no decoration. This is a breathing labyrinth. And here's the kicker. It doesn't even use its mouth. The whisper rises again, this time with a tone that bends halfway through the air. It sounds like a pipe organ being exhaled by a creature older than cities. Historians still debate whether these cranial crests were used exclusively for sound or if they had other purposes, maybe temperature control, maybe courtship, or maybe just fashion. But you're watching it now and there's no mistaking it. This is speech, not language, not words, but something older, something wetter. The dinosaur lifts its head slightly and lets the tone drop a descending sigh through its head chamber that causes a pair of ferns to tremble from 10 feet away. You whisper back, "Why not?" Nothing happens. But the dinosaur twitches one eye ridge. You imagine its skull in a museum, the empty pipes, the coiled passages, the elegant bone loops. Some crested hadrosaur skulls, like those of Parasaurolophus, have nasal tubes over 6 feet long. That's longer than your entire torso, devoted solely to inhaling, exhaling, and shaping air. You step closer just a little. The creature doesn't move. Then it exhales again, and you feel it vibrate your ribs, not because it's loud, but because it's low. Like a didgeridoo played through the back of a cave. The sound moves through you, not around, through. You stagger back. "Okay," you mutter, rubbing your chest. Rude. It hums again. You think it might be laughing. Another creature approaches, a slightly smaller one, similar crest. They face each other, mirror each other's posture. One exhales, then the other matches the frequency. Not perfectly, but close. Like tuning forks trying to harmonize across a jungle. You watch motionless as they perform this ritual. Not a roar, not a display of feathers or claws, just a subtle looping duet of skull-sung notes. You don't know if they're mates, siblings, or just commuters in the forest rush hour. But they speak without words, and you're listening in on a conversation that started 75 million years ago and never needed vowels. An odd fact to chew on modern cassowaries: those grumpy, flightless birds in Australia can produce infrasonic calls that are so low they vibrate the ground. Some researchers think those birds are a living hint of how these dinosaurs might have sounded, just more bone flute, less murder chicken. The dinosaurs pause. One tilts its head. Then suddenly it exhales with force. The sound ricochets off a rock face and loops back, echoing once, twice, then dying out. You hear nothing more. The creature's skull shape with its sweeping resonance chambers allowed it to manipulate echoes. not just make noise but sculpt it, like a sound sculptor, a whisper architect. And just like that, they both walk away, their footsteps inaudible beneath the low-breathing forest. You exhale yourself finally. Try to recreate the shape of the sound with your own nose. You fail. Next to you, a branch snaps. You flinch. It's not them. It's a much smaller dinosaur. A juvenile. It doesn't have a crest, but you can see the start of one forming above its snout, a little ridge of cartilage swelling with every breath. It stares at you curious, then tries its own nasal sigh. It's awful, like someone blowing through a soggy straw. Still, you give it a thumbs up. You'll get there, kid. Some paleontologists suggest that these creatures learn to use their nasal passages the way we learn to speak, gradually awkwardly through mimicry and failure. Others argue the structures were too complicated to evolve just for sound. But again, you're here. You've heard the forest hum with breath. You felt the resonance move through your feet like underground thunder. You crouch and press your ear to the soil. You hear them beneath you. The breath hum never stops. Here comes your second joke of the night. If you tried to have a shouting match in this forest, the local dinosaurs would probably respond by sighing in judgment, like passive-aggressive librarians with musical heads. The juvenile dinosaur huffs again, clearly trying to get your attention. You wave it off. Behind it, a massive older one appears. Full crest, broad snout, probably a parent. It doesn't sigh, it just inhales, and the air bends around its skull. This inhale alone makes you take a step back. It's like hearing a cello string tighten with the pull of gravity. Then one long exhale. The juvenile mimics it again. Still bad. And yet, the adult does not correct or scold, just listens. That might be the most human moment you've seen all day. You've got to admit it's poetic. A species that learned to use its bones to whisper instead of shout. A world where the skull is both instrument and amplifier, and the loudest thing you might hear all day is the rush of air through a nose. You sigh softly, try to match the tone. The juvenile tilts its head. For a moment, you wonder if it understands. You follow the whispering herd at a respectful distance. Boots damp from last night's mist. Nostrils tingling with the scent of resin and old bark. They don't move quickly, they don't need to. The rhythm of their breath maps their movement like a slow percussion track. Inhale, exhale, harmonize. Wait. Your path winds alongside them, and it feels less like trailing animals and more like drifting beside an orchestra that doesn't know it's performing. Up ahead, a new shape rises from the foliage, a hadrosaur but with a nasal crest that looks absurdly convoluted, like an entire French horn welded to its forehead. You squint at it. Even in profile, its nasal passage loops so far back over its skull, it almost touches the nape of its neck. And that's when it exhales. The sound isn't a sound. It's a sensation, a pulsing warmth that flows over your arms like a tide. You don't hear it so much as feel it roll out in 3 waves, each passing deeper into your chest. You stumble, slightly blinking. That's not a nose, that's a labyrinth. Historians still debate the exact structure of these nasal passages. Some reconstructions suggest they curled internally. Others that they formed visible tubes. But all agree on one thing. These dinosaurs didn't breathe through their noses, they breathed with them. It's like each breath is a brushstroke on the forest. And the forest responds. You watch as leaves rustle gently along the crest's breath path. A fern frond unfolds. Another hadrosaur sighs back, but in a slightly higher frequency. You get the sense this isn't random. It's patterned. Maybe familial, maybe territorial, maybe a game. But it's encoded in air. You creep closer and duck behind a patch of horsetails. A small herd crosses a shallow creek, each creature releasing breath tones as it steps into the water. Some are short and flat. Others are long and tremble at the end. It's like a chorus of wind instruments, except nobody's performing. They're just living, breathing. And here's a weird little twist. Some paleontologists have pointed out similarities between these dinosaurs' nasal passages and the way human noses resonate during deep speech. the kind you use when humming to yourself or telling secrets in a cave. That low register, that's nostril science. A nearby juvenile breaks off from the group and tries to imitate a particularly impressive, multi-toned sigh. It fails spectacularly, letting out a high-pitched wheeze that sounds more like a tea kettle in distress. One of the adults lets out what can only be described as a corrective puff. Stern but patient. The kid tries again. You chuckle quietly. Practice makes parp. The oddest thing about all of this, these nasal labyrinths likely evolved before they had much use for complex vocalization, meaning the airflow came first and the meaning came later. It's like someone built a musical instrument with no intention of ever playing it until evolution said, "Hey, what if we breathe dramatically?" You feel the wind shift and suddenly one of the larger dinosaurs lifts its head. Its crest arches skyward like a fossilized feather plume, but inside it's all tunnels. The exhale is drawn out like breath being pulled through wet reeds. You imagine air entering the nostrils, pushed through the coiling nasal loops, amplified in chambers inside the skull, and finally expelled through carefully evolved exit valves. It's a flute, a horn, a foghorn, but only if foghorns could blush. The forest dims as clouds pass overhead, and for a moment you're aware of how quiet you are in comparison. You try to breathe through your nose lightly, mimicking the pace of the herd. You fail immediately. Too shallow, too fast. You laugh quietly, of course. Third joke of the night. If humans had nasal passages like this every time you sighed at your boss, it would register on the Richter scale. You creep farther downstream where the herd rests beside a shallow pond. Some of the younger ones splash idly. No roaring, no honking, just subtle puffs of air and the occasional high-frequency squeak like toddlers playing with windpipes instead of toys. One older hadrosaur lowers its head toward the water not to drink, but to whisper across its surface. The sound warps through the mist above the pond and travels to the opposite bank where a lone figure, another adult, responds with a mirrored tone. You watch this back and forth for nearly 10 minutes. No gestures, no movement, just air. And still something is communicated. A decision is made. The lone adult rises and joins the herd. You marvel at the idea of full conversations conducted without words, only shaped breath. It's poetic. It's private. It's a middle finger to the modern world of shouty notifications and megaphone marketing. Here, breath is enough. And there's another layer. Thermoregulation. Yeah, some scientists argue these nasal passages weren't just for whispering, they helped cool blood, maintain internal temperature, and even humidify incoming air. Each exhale carried warmth and intent. Each inhale was filtered through spiral structures that gently conditioned the oxygen. You sit on a rock and feel the moist air drift around you. It's not heavy like steam. It's intentional, directional. These dinosaurs didn't just breathe, they curated the air. That's not metaphor, that's ancient biology. You close your eyes and try to follow it. The patterns, the pulses. You almost fall asleep until something gently bumps your side. You open your eyes to see a juvenile hadrosaur watching you, head tilted, its crest just beginning to swell above its brow ridge. It puffs at you. It's a test. Or a greeting. Or maybe just a prehistoric version of supwa. Sabio. You purse your lips and blow through your nose. It comes out as a snort. The juvenile looks at you like you've insulted its entire lineage. It huffs again. You try again. Still a snort. Maybe you're just not evolved enough. It sighs, turns, and walks off. Even the babies here have standards. And you sit alone now, a creature with two simple lungs, wondering what it would feel like to let your breath curl through your skull before reaching the world. You rest on a slope that smells like old pine needles and damp skin. The herd has quieted now, not because they're gone, but because they've lain down to sleep and their whispers have become something new. Something deeper. It begins with a long, low exhale from somewhere in the ferns. You feel it before you hear it. A hum that doesn't enter your ears, it settles into your rib cage like a second heartbeat. Then another joins in. Then another. What you're hearing isn't snoring. It's not even breathing as you know it. These are lung songs, slow intentional vibrations rising from the bodies of slumbering dinosaurs. Their nostrils pulse gently with each note, and the air around them becomes soft and warm, like it's being stirred by a distant drum. It's night in the Cretaceous, and the forest is asleep but never silent. One of the adults shifts its weight. Its chest expands like a bellows, and you watch as air moves through its whole body in one long breath. From belly to throat to crest, it vibrates like a living instrument. You can almost picture the airflow curling up through its nasal labyrinth, bouncing through bony loops, whispering secrets into the trees. Historians still debate whether this nighttime humming served a social function. Was it communication, thermoregulation, or just a byproduct of large lungs in rest mode? But lying here listening, you can't help but feel there's meaning in the harmony. You remember an odd modern fact: some whales use low-frequency hums while sleeping that can travel for miles underwater. Maybe this is the land version prehistoric sleep sonar. Hey, I'm over here. Still alive, still dreaming. You shift your weight and lie back against a soft slope of moss. A fern brushes your cheek, cool and waxy. Above you, the canopy trembles slightly as the breath vibrations pass through it. It's like sleeping beneath a cathedral pipe organ if the organ had once eaten ferns for a living. Your eyes drift shut. You dream of lungs the size of rafts, breathing in rhythm with the moonlight. And you wake to silence. But not real silence, just a change. The herd has adjusted. The tones are lower now, more spaced out. Some seem timed, like they're synchronizing. You sit up slowly, trying not to crack a twig, and count the intervals between the hums. 5 seconds, 8, 13. A pattern. Then it breaks, then starts again. You think about how these animals sleep with half an ear open, tuned to the vibrations of others. If someone shifts in distress or if a hum ceases altogether, that's the alert. No cries, no trumpeting panic, just the absence of breath. That's how you know something's wrong. You glance around. One hum has stopped. You hold your own breath, trying to isolate it. There. A juvenile curled too tightly. Crest flat. No movement. One of the adults exhales sharply, short-clipped, deliberate. Another joins in, this time with a tremble. You don't move. You don't blink. A third adult rises, walks carefully toward the still one. No growls. No cries. Just steady, low pulses of air aimed directly at it. And then movement. The juvenile stirs, stretches its legs, and sighs out a shaky, high-pitched puff. The adults respond gently, warm waves of breath washing over the creature. Communication without noise. Care without chaos. And here comes your joke, honestly. If modern humans learned to check on each other with bedtime nasal vibrations, we'd save ourselves half of all awkward sleepovers and morning-after misunderstandings. The juvenile gets up, lumbers toward its parent, and nestles beneath its chest cavity. The hum resumes. The rhythm returns. You watch for another hour. You should probably sleep, but it feels wrong to shut your eyes while the forest breathes this way. Eventually, you scoot back and curl under your jacket head, resting against your pack. And the dreams return. You're in a temple made of ribs. The walls inhale and exhale. The floor is a diaphragm. The roof is a pair of lungs. Everything is breath. You wake again just before dawn. The color of the world has shifted bluer now, with silver fog laced between the trees. The herd stirs, slowly, peacefully. They rise one by one, not with noise, but with breath. A long sigh here, a humming puff there. It's like listening to an orchestra tune itself before a concert. A particularly large adult lets out a deep, resonant hum that vibrates the bark of the nearby tree. You feel it up your spine. You want to clap, but that would be rude. Instead, you stand, stretch, nod respectfully at the big one. It blinks once. You're dismissed. And here's something wild. Some fossilized chest cavities of these dinosaurs suggest an unusually high lung capacity and strong air sacs similar to modern birds. That means they could produce sustained breath vibrations all night long if needed. Evolution didn't just give them powerful lungs, it gave them lungs that could sing in their sleep. You wonder for just a moment if any of those breath songs were passed down, taught, whispered from mother to child through dreams. You walk away slowly, leaving the herd behind. The fog curls after you, soft and whispering. A final nasal hum fades into the morning. And somewhere in your chest, you swear you carry a little of that rhythm with you now. You're not even 5 minutes into your morning hike when you hear the mistake. It slices through this forest like a fork dragged across a dinner plate. Loud, clumsy, mouth-based. You freeze mid-step, every hair on your body poised like a fern before a storm. Whatever made that noise, it doesn't belong here. You creep forward, sliding behind a collapsed tree trunk. And then you see it. A juvenile dinosaur, maybe a hadrosaur, standing near a stream bed calling out with its mouth wide open. Not a nasal hum, not a breathy pulse, a proper full-throated Hollywood-style shout. It's not even a good one. High-pitched, desperate like a broken saxophone taped to a vacuum cleaner. You close your eyes and whisper, "Oh, no, no, no," because the forest reacts. Every creature within earshot stops what it's doing. The breath patterns halt. The air thickens. Even the fog seems to recoil. And then you hear something else. Rustling, fast, directional. The predator doesn't roar. It doesn't growl. It doesn't announce anything. It just moves. You can't see it yet, but you feel the shift in the air. A silent stalker, perhaps. A dromaeosaur, sickle-clawed nose, low breath, held. Something evolved to hear mistakes like this. The juvenile doesn't know. It calls again. A mouthy, tragic bleat that echoes through the trees like a dinner bell, shaped like a baby. You want to yell, to warn it. But what are you going to do, outshout a dinosaur? Instead, you crouch low and wait. The underbrush ahead explodes. Something dark and quick barrels forward. The juvenile finally freezes too late. A flash of claws, a burst of leaves. Then silence. No more bleeding. No more breathing. Just the wind through the now empty nasal crests of nearby onlookers. Historians still debate whether predators actively hunted loud dinosaurs, or if silence was more about social cohesion, but honestly, does it matter? You just saw the outcome. The rest of the herd doesn't panic. They breathe evenly, a series of soft puffs like a sigh code. It happened. Keep still. Move on. You step backward 1 foot at a time. You don't look at the spot where it ended. You don't need to. And you think not for the first time today that evolution has a sense of humor? It gave dinosaurs lungs powerful enough to scream across a continent, then punish them for using them. You continue through the forest slower now. The nasal hums resume soft, cautious, spaced apart like emotional damage control. A no one sings today, no long chords, just single, steady exhales. Somewhere up ahead, a particularly large dinosaur emits a sound like a drawn-out breath through cupped hands. It's soothing, almost like a lullaby. You realize it's a form of mourning. And here's your odd fact of the day. Scientists once found a fossilized larynx from a dinosaur-era bird, and it showed evidence of soft vocal tissue not suited for roaring, but possibly for gentle, high-frequency songs. Prehistoric lullabies, maybe. The quiet ones made it. You stop to rest near a shallow stream. The water whispers over pebbles, mirroring the rhythm of nasal breath nearby. It's eerie how well these dinosaurs synchronize with the environment. Their soundscape never clashes. It merges, adapts. You remember watching wildlife documentaries as a kid, those dramatic moments when lions roared over plains or whales called through the deep. But here the drama's in restraint. The adult hadrosaurs pass beside you, eyes steady, nostrils flaring with measured breath. They know what happened back there, but they also know it wasn't personal. It was natural. Loud equals dead. You take a breath through your nose, trying not to interrupt the rhythm, still too sharp. Third joke of the day. If this forest were a library, you'd be that person unwrapping a loud snack during someone's thesis defense. You rise and follow again, this time keeping to the edges. You notice now how the group doesn't always exhale in unison, but there's a coordination to their noise levels. When one sighs, the others respond with breath tones of complementary pitch. You suspect it's not just communication, it's camouflage. Imagine a predator trying to isolate one sound. One breathy voice only to find that it blends too well with the wind and the trees and the other dinosaurs, like trying to find a single raindrop in a thunderstorm. You spot a small dinosaur at the edge of the herd. A different species. Shorter crest, thinner frame. It doesn't exhale. It inhales with a sharp chirping pulse, then puffs it back out rhythmically. It's imitating wind perfectly. You listen hard. It sounds exactly like the breeze rustling through a nearby palm frond, camouflaged by breath. You realize now this place doesn't just punish the loud, it rewards the clever. Somewhere deep in your pack, your phone buzzes. You forgot to silence it. A single notification ping escapes. The dinosaur with the wind breath pauses, turns its head. You freeze. Nothing happens. But a nearby adult sends a single warning breath your way, just one. A quiet hiss that translates roughly to, seriously. You nod. Apologize with your eyes. Silence your phone. You walk slower now, aware that the forest is listening to you, not the other way around. And here's the thought that sticks with you as you go. Loud is easy. Loud is lazy. Breathing, that takes skill. The trail splits and you hesitate. To your left, tall trees shiver in the wind, but no other sound breaks the stillness. To your right, the air hums. Faint nasal pulses come in waves, measured, polite, cautious. Two herds. You decide to follow the loud one first. The air grows more restless as you approach. A hadrosaur trumpets with its mouth as if trying to shout its location to the world. You wince. Even the local insects scatter. You crouch behind a fallen log and watch. This group, unlike the quiet herd from earlier, seems addicted to volume. Not chaos, just enthusiasm. Every call, every movement accompanied by a honk or bellow. Their young run in circles and squeak with abandon. It's almost charming in a self-destructive sort of way. And yet you can't look away. They behave more like geese at a picnic than ancient forest giants. But then from the shadows, something else watches too. A sleek theropod crouched low the way a shadow might crouch. It doesn't move yet. It just listens. You can tell it's been doing that for a while. Its patience hums louder than the hadrosaur's calls. Historians still debate whether these loud-mouthed herds evolved in isolated regions where predators were less common and their boisterous communication didn't cost them much. Or maybe they were still learning, experimenting with the old ways. All you know is there's a price for being heard. You leave before the inevitable strike. You don't want to see it again. You backtrack to the quiet path, stepping lightly, letting your own breath mimic the forest's tempo. Here the air is denser. Every tree seems to hush you. And then you hear it again, not sound, pattern, nasal pulses, whispered exhalations, short bursts followed by silence. This group doesn't call across the trees, they thread between them. You move closer. The herd here is smaller but older. You sense wisdom in the way they navigate, stopping at intervals, shifting in sync, and releasing synchronized puffs like an ancient breathing ritual. Each nostril movement is subtle, deliberate. Less like a call and more like a code. It reminds you of Morse code if Morse had been designed by forest monks with lungs the size of bathtubs. One juvenile breaks pattern and lets out a nasal squeal, too sharp, too fast. The older ones don't scold. They simply surround it, exhale in a tight spiral, and the young one hushes. Lesson learned. Odd fact of the day, there's a species of modern mole rat that uses nasal pops to navigate underground. Not echolocation exactly, just bursts of air to fuel their tunnels. You wonder if these dinosaurs are doing something similar but above ground through air. You notice something strange about this quiet group. Their eyes are sharper, their posture lower. Their flanks twitch not in fear, but readiness. They're not just quieter, they're tuned in. And as you follow them, the forest seems to shift with them. No birds spook, no branches snap. Even the wind adjusts. Now here's your joke. If you held a talent show in this forest, the loud herd would bring a trumpet and the quiet one would just breathe into a seashell and win. The group pauses near a clearing. You stay hidden behind a thicket of horsetails. A predator circles the edge, maybe the same one from earlier. It moves in from the side, sniffing tasting air. The herd doesn't panic, doesn't bolt. Instead, they breathe. One exhales slowly, a long, flat tone. Another answers with a rising nasal pulse. A third vibrates both nostrils in a counter rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. They form a circle. They don't scatter. They breathe together. And the predator, confused, lowers its head and retreats. Too many pulses, too many signals. No weak link. It slinks off defeated by a concert of sighs. You feel something you didn't expect, pride. These whisperers, they know the game. Loud doesn't equal strong here. Coordinated does. You trail behind them as they move on, amazed at how few marks they leave. Their footfalls are light. Their breath fades quickly. And then you realize the contrast. The loud herd behind you likely drew the predator off its original path. This quiet one simply existed in another layer of sound, less accessible, less fatal. Historians argue about how sound behavior evolved in different dinosaur lineages. But in this moment, you don't need a degree. You just need ears. Breath in this forest is strategy. Weapon, map. You pass a spot where the quiet herd once paused. The scent of moss and damp hide lingers. A few impressions in the soil, nothing else. No vocal residue, just silence and a faint pulse of memory. You take a deep breath through your nose. Try to match their rhythm. Too loud. Again. You sigh. The air responds. You think about how modern humans yell to communicate urgency. Fire. Help. Stop. But here, urgency is in the space between breath patterns, the speed of exhale, the shape of silence. It's complex, it's ancient, and it works. You keep walking, but you carry their rhythm in your lungs now. And next time you speak, maybe, just maybe, you'll use your nose. You walk until the trees thin and the scent shifts, less fern, more steam. Ahead lies a marshland, the kind that gurgles underfoot and smells like something exhaled by the earth itself. It's warm here, not just from the sun, but from the breath of the land, and from the dinosaurs breathing through it. You spot them immediately, half-submerged giants, nestled in the reeds, steam rising off their backs like fog lifting from mountains. But the real action is in the air. You hear it, a gentle wheeze, cyclical and low. Each breath out through those coiled nostrils sounds like the opening notes of a bamboo flute. But it's not music. It's maintenance. You creep closer. The closest hadrosaur exhales through a complex spiral of nasal passages, and a puff of warm air escapes in a tight, misty plume. You watch fascinated as it lifts its head slightly and inhales not just through its nose but through its system. The air spirals inward like a whirlpool pulled through a maze of moist membranes and hollow bone. And here's the punchline: you realize that the dinosaur is air conditioning itself. Historians still debate the primary function of these bizarre nasal structures. Were they for sound, for display, for courtship? But here, watching this dinosaur nestled into its own personal mud jacuzzi, the evidence curls up like steam. Those passages regulate heat. Odd modern fact: camels. Yes, camels. Cool incoming air with their spiraling nasal turbinates. It's how they survive blazing desert heat. The similarity is unsettling. You're looking at a prehistoric swamp camel that plays jazz through its nose. Another dinosaur exhales a longer stream, this time through nostrils, angled to shoot across its back. You watch as the moisture condenses on its skin, cooling it in the morning heat. This isn't lazy breathing, this is bioengineering. You imagine it: hot blood flows near the nasal chambers. Cool, moist air pulls the temperature down. The lungs relax. The animal doesn't overheat. It's not just surviving, it's regulating itself like a giant fleshy thermostat. One juvenile sneezes violently and without grace. The others shuffle away from the resulting cloud of dino snot, clearly unimpressed. You snort too loud. A nearby adult shoots a quick side puff in your direction. You swear it sounds like amateur. You settle behind a bush and keep watching. The herd's position in the marsh isn't random. They've parked themselves where the wind moves slow, where water meets heat. You can see it in how they angle their nostrils directed not upward but sideways, catching the rising warm air and spinning it inward like smoke through a vent. Each breath is calculated. And that's the joke of the day: modern humans build air conditioning units. Dinosaurs evolved them into their faces. You wonder how long it took, how many generations of mouth-breathing failures melted in swamps before evolution said, "Let's try something with spirals." You crouch lower. A young dinosaur lifts its head and begins the breath sequence: inhale through the coils. Exhale slow, across the tongue. The result is a hiss that smells like wet wood and peppery bark. It repeats this 5 times, then lowers its head and sinks back into the mud. You blink. That wasn't just a random breath. It was a routine. You watch the adults and realize they're doing it too. Each one following a loop of timed inhales and exhales, almost meditative. You feel like you've stumbled into a yoga retreat for giant swamp lizards. Inhale, pause, exhale, pulse, pause, repeat. The marsh ripples with the rhythm. Dragonflies float through the breath plumes unbothered. A warm breeze brushes your face and you wonder, do humans ever breathe like this anymore? Controlled. Purposeful. Aware. Probably not. You're more likely to mouth breathe through traffic, scream into your phone, and pass out in front of a fan. But here the forest is its own circulatory system. The creature's part of the pulse. You watch as one of the dinosaurs rises and walks slowly into a pool, steam curling around its nostrils. It dunks its head, then surfaces with a deep, spiraling breath that sounds like a tunnel clearing itself. You swear the temperature shifts around it. It sighs again, louder this time, and the exhale washes toward you in a warm draft that smells of algae and ancient bark. You lean into it, surprised by how calming it is. Then it turns its head and releases a final puff directly at you. You're caught off guard. It's not aggressive, not threatening, but it's deliberate. You've been scanned. Some researchers believe nasal exhalations could carry individual sense or thermal signatures, ways to identify each other without vision or sound, like ancient biometric scanners made of breath. You nod politely, unsure what else to do. The dinosaur turns away, and you exhale through your nose, trying to mimic its rhythm. Too fast. You try again, slower, shaped, more spiral than blast. Better. Your breath forms a thin mist in the air. You almost imagine it curling, remembering something. You walk away from the marsh herd as the sun rises higher. The temperature climbs, but you feel regulated. A little less human, a little more tuned. You step into the shade and realize your own nostrils are open wider now, sensing air shaping it, adjusting. It's not survival, it's adaptation, primitive and perfect. You're not exactly sure what you're witnessing at first. The clearing is wide, unusually bare of underbrush, and dappled with the soft pink of early sun slipping between cycads. In the center, a group of dinosaurs circles each other, not aggressive, not territorial. Something gentler. They don't roar, they sigh. A long, steady nasal exhale from one individual, followed by a soft, quivering puff from another. It's a duet, not a challenge. You crouch low and blink slowly, trying not to miss it. This is courtship, but not the kind plastered on nature documentaries where creatures flare feathers or bash heads like over-caffeinated goats. No, this is slower, older, quieter. A romance sculpted from breath and nostril. The largest hadrosaur tilts its skull slightly. Its crest curves backward in a tight arc, almost elegant. With a motion so smooth it feels rehearsed, it exhales soft, deep spiraling. The sound travels low and wide like breath through a warm clay tunnel. The other dinosaur shivers, not with fear, with reception. Historians still debate whether dinosaurs had rituals for attraction or if mating was purely opportunistic. But here, watching these creatures whisper to each other through their nasal labyrinths, you'd bet your last snack bar that something deliberate is happening. They pace each other, step for step. Each breath a response. One exhales and pulses 4 short, 1 long. The other answers in reverse. There's rhythm, pattern, tenderness. It's music without melody. And here's your odd fact of the day. The male palm cockatoo of Australia builds drums and taps out love songs with sticks to woo females. You'd think breathy hadrosaurs might be less romantic, but you're wrong. They invented the prehistoric saxophone, and they're using it right now. You glance around the clearing. Other members of the herd are close, but no one interrupts. It's not a show. It's a ritual. Private. Precise. One of the lovers steps closer. Their nostrils align. They exhale at the same time. The air between them shimmers briefly with humidity and heat. You don't hear anything loud, but you feel it, like standing near a low-frequency speaker. The ground doesn't shake, but your ribs understand. You realize now this isn't just display, it's synchronization. They're tuning each other. Breath as compatibility test. If your airflow harmonizes with mine, maybe we raise our strange flute-headed babies together. You're tempted to laugh, but don't. You exhale through your own nose instead, trying once again to understand. Too sharp, as always. And then you hear something unexpected. A third dinosaur tries to join in. It's clumsy louder with a less intricate crest, maybe younger or just overeager. It tries to mimic the pair's breath duet, but its exhale stutters like a beginner on an oboe. The courting pair stop immediately. There is no confrontation, no bite, no chase, just a breath, one long, beautifully even sigh from the larger dinosaur. It's not rejection, it's a dismissal, a gentle nasal. No thank you. The third wheel lowers its crest and slinks away, exhaling in awkward sputters. You feel a little bad, but also respect. That was the most elegant swipe left you've ever witnessed. Your joke of the day. In the dinosaur version of dating apps, everyone's profile would just be sound clips of their nasal exhale. Swipe right if you like warm, slow vibrations through my left nostril. The original couple resumes. One steps forward, brushing its snout gently across the other's neck. Their breath mingles again, this time slower, warmer. You crouch lower behind a log, barely daring to blink. Then something beautiful, the pair lean in, press the upper parts of their snouts together, and share a mutual exhale. One synchronized breath. No noise, no drama, just a shared silence shaped into meaning. Historians have long speculated about the crests of hadrosaurs, how the exact internal structure of the nasal passages may have allowed for individual voice signatures like fingerprints made of air. If that's true, then this breath they're sharing, it's like trading names, souls. And here's a weird angle: these nasal crests may have been sexually dimorphic with subtle differences between males and females. Meaning courtship breath wasn't just beautiful, it was biological clarity. You're not only attracted, you're also compatible, a perfect breath match. You feel like you've been invited to a wedding and a sound bath all at once. The herd begins to move again slowly. The pair stay close side by side, their breaths match now even in resting. When one inhales, so does the other. Their exhalations spiral into the air like twin smoke signals with no fire needed. You rise quietly and follow them at a respectful distance. You pass another pair practicing, less smooth, more wheezy, still learning. A juvenile nearby mimics them. Both fails and lets out a wild honk that ruins everything. One of the older dinosaurs sighs so deeply it flattens a nearby fern with sheer disappointment. You chuckle, and you wonder how many romances were lost to poor breath control. The herd reaches a watering hole. The courting pair separate briefly to drink, but even then, their breath keeps time. Puff, puff, pause, puff. As if love is less about gestures and more about rhythm. You walk away from the clearing, the sounds of the lovers fading behind you. Not gone, just quieter. You wonder if breath is the first language of intimacy, the one we forget as humans. All those deep sighs across pillows. All those small, wordless exhalations before and after a kiss. Maybe we're not so different. Maybe we just got louder and forgot how to listen. The wind changes, and suddenly so does everything. You're walking quietly now, like a local, but something ahead tells you to stop. Not because you see danger, not because of movement, because of absence. The whispering has vanished. Not silence, no. The forest still breathes, but the usual nasal chorus, the spiraling exhales, the polite puffing is gone. What remains is tight, rhythmic clipped, like breath trying not to be noticed. You lower yourself slowly behind a wide cicada frond and peer into a narrow valley. A cluster of dinosaurs stands motionless, backs to the wind, nostrils flared slightly but not exhaling. They're listening, and then you hear it barely. A click, not from the mouth, from the nose. One of the smaller feathered dinosaurs, something like a proto-bird, tilts its head, flares one nostril and emits a tight, rapid-fire set of nasal pulses. Click, click, click. Another answers click, click, click. You freeze, barely breathing your ears, straining to pick up patterns. The clicks don't echo. They don't travel far. But they don't need to. They're perfect. Historians still debate whether these nasal clicks were a form of language or a more primitive audio signaling system like Morse code whispered through breathing tubes. But the timing, the consistency, it's hard not to see intent. And more importantly, it's how they're warning each other. Silently. Somewhere far to your left, a low growl faint, almost mistaken for wind. The source is hidden, but the dinosaurs already know. The clicks increase. 1, 2, 3. Pause. 1. Pause. 3. You realize they're signaling direction, and maybe distance. It's a code born of nostrils and necessity. The odd fact of the day: the spotted hyena can make distinct calls without using its vocal cords, just adjusting airflow through its nasal passages. These creatures here are no less advanced, just far more elegant. A young one clicks the wrong rhythm, too fast, too loud. An older dinosaur moves swiftly, not to scold, but to cover. It exhales in a long, low hiss that muffles the young one's mistake. The air seems to flatten around them like noise being ironed away. No panic, no stampede, just careful breath and ancient math. And then in the underbrush movement, the predator appears. It's huge. Feathers shaggy around its shoulders, claws curved like question marks. A predator from nightmares, but it makes no sound. Just slinks tongue tasting the wind. It doesn't roar. It hunts by sound, which means this game is being played on its terms. The clicking stops entirely. The air stills. You can't even hear your own breath now. The predator sniffs, crouches, waits. One of the feathered dinosaurs pulses its nostrils 3 times, barely audible. Another on the opposite end of the clearing responds in mirror. It's a decoy. The predator turns, following the faint pulses. Then nothing. Not even leaves rustling. The entire herd has vanished behind trees, rocks, depressions in the landscape you didn't even notice before. Gone, except for one dinosaur crouched beneath a low shelf of stone, unmoving. You notice now it's the same one that made the mistake earlier. The predator sniffs again, moving closer. You brace yourself. Then, out of nowhere, a nasal blast, not a scream, not a roar, but an exaggerated puff from the decoy. It reverberates down a rock channel, creating an echo trail that mimics movement. The predator lunges, but it's lunging at air. The dinosaur beneath the stone scurries out, rejoining its kin in a practiced silent sprint. You shake your head. That was a fake out, you whisper. You're beginning to see this for what it really is, a full audio camouflage system, sculpted by air and desperation. And here comes your joke of the day: humans invented walkie-talkies. These dinosaurs had breathy whispers with better encryption. You keep watching the group from your hidden perch. They reform without ceremony, exhaling in low, resynced pulses. No celebration, just relief registered in tempo. You wonder what it must feel like to communicate entirely through air. Not noise, not words, just pressure. Humidity, pattern. What's the emotional range of a nasal puff? Could you say thank you, or you scared me, or even you're forgiven with just your nose? Probably. Because one of the older ones now moves toward the little one, brushes its beak against its flank, and exhales a warm, slow breath across its back. The younger exhales back. The rhythm matches. They walk on. You sit still for a while listening to the breath echoes fade. These creatures haven't disappeared, they've just dropped off your auditory map. Their whispers dissolve into wind and stream and insect buzz, and you wonder what else you're missing, what other languages exist in pressure waves and body heat and barely audible clicks. Eventually, you rise slow and breath first. You exhale once long and quiet. The forest doesn't respond, but you're pretty sure it heard you. You've been walking beside a shallow canyon for most of the morning now. The path narrowing to a kind of natural corridor between stone and scrub. The wind moves like it's hunting something. And then, oddly enough, you hear it whispers. But not from dinosaurs this time. From water. A stream trickles beside you, gentle and melodic, curling around pebbles and fallen leaves. It chuckles. It purrs. It sounds like it's trying to imitate something. Or maybe something else is imitating it. You stop and listen closely. Above the stream bank, nestled along a ledge, stands a group of long-snouted dinosaurs. Slender, upright, with crests that don't spiral flamboyantly like the hadrosaurs from earlier. These are subtler, hollowed just enough to form tone, not drama. One of them lifts its snout and exhales. The sound it makes is perfectly synchronized with the stream's babble. You blink. Wait. Another does the same. Then a third, one after the other, like tuning forks harmonizing with a natural choir. It's eerie, beautiful, precise. And then it hits you. They're not just breathing with the environment, they're mimicking it. Historians still debate the extent to which prehistoric creatures mimicked natural sounds as part of camouflage or communication. But here, you're watching it unfold in real time. This is mimicry by sound profile. The whispering dinosaurs have learned to hide by matching their breath to the music of their home. Odd fact for your brain, the lyrebird of Australia can perfectly replicate chainsaws, car alarms, and camera shutters. Evolution apparently loves weird talents. These dinosaurs. They picked rivers. One of the crested adults exhales again, and you swear the stream pauses for a beat, like it recognizes itself in the tone. It's hard to say which one is more alive. You crouch and lean in. Then you spot the real genius, a juvenile, sitting closer to the water, exhaling in syncopated bursts that mimic a trickling eddy at the stream's bend. But it's not just for fun. Every few puffs it pauses, turns its head, and checks the reactions of the others. It's practicing. You nearly laugh out loud. You're telling me there are dinosaur beatboxers, us? Sauce, us all in this. One of the adults exhales sharply. You go still. Was that a warning? A critique of your volume? You mouth an apology. They return to their mimicry rhythm, unbroken. Here comes your joke of the day. If evolution were a talent show, this group would win for best impersonation of a freshwater feature, and nobody would even know they were on stage. You begin to notice more layers. Not all the breath tones match the stream directly. Some sync to the chirps of insects or the rustling wind. One breath matches the squeak of a tree limb above. It's like the entire group is composing a camouflage, each dinosaur responsible for blending into a different part of the forest's voice. And the predator? You don't see it, but you feel it. Somewhere in the brush, a meat-eater is probably watching. But here, there's no single point of failure. No distinct voice to hunt. The herd has become white noise. A wall of natural mimicry so complete it erases the line between creature and terrain. You crouch lower, careful now. You understand what's at stake. The trick isn't to be silent. The trick is to sound like everything else. You watch one adult lead the group downstream. Their path follows the curve of the stream bed. Their exhalations adjust longer, gentler, now mimicking the wider, slower flow of water through reeds. You realize this is a migration not of geography, but of soundscape. And here's the kicker. There's no vocal cord involved. These dinosaurs are breathing through their noses like a panpipe ensemble built out of bone and instinct. One misstep, one off-rhythm breath, and the illusion could break. But it doesn't. Even the juveniles seem hardwired for imitation. You see a smaller one copy the gurgle of a bubbling corner of the stream so precisely, even you glance toward the water thinking it shifted. You start to notice how your own breath sticks out, too dry, too quick, too modern. You try adjusting again. Inhale softly. Exhale low. It doesn't work. You're not born of this sound. You're just visiting. The group pauses at a natural alcove where the stream burrows underground for a short distance. Here the air is cooler, denser. The stone absorbs sound, but the breath tones don't stop. They adjust. Higher pitch, tighter exhalations whispering over stone instead of water. It's like listening to musicians improvise mid-performance without missing a beat. One exhale bounces perfectly off the rock wall and returns in a three-note echo. Another dinosaur copies the echo instead of the original breath. Now that's confidence. You sit and take it all in. This is more than survival. It's art. The sound matching isn't just camouflage. It's identity, territory, maybe even pride. To breathe a canyon is to belong to it. And there's your odd academic theory. Some paleontologists suggest these mimic breath patterns may have developed alongside environmental memory. A kind of oral history, but exhaled. Not passed down in words, but in rhythms of place. You imagine dinosaurs migrating not by maps, but by breath trails. Yes, this is the valley that sings in thirds. Or, don't go there, the wind doesn't echo properly. You sit until the herd moves on. They leave no trail, only echoes. You remain at the stream's edge for a long time after trying to sync your own breath to the bubbling water. You don't succeed, but you listen better. And as you rise and walk away, you find yourself exhaling in rhythm with the forest. Not perfect, but closer. There's something strange about the air now. It moves heavy like sound itself is pressing down. The trees are spaced wider here, letting the sky in, but the space feels thick, like you've walked into the lung of something older. Then you feel it a low pulse through the soil, not from footsteps, but from air. Pressure, breath. You crouch, hand to the ground. Another pulse. It's not random. You follow the vibration toward a bare patch of land ringed by smooth stones and dried-out stumps. At first it seems abandoned. Then you notice the shapes around the edges massive, still breathing in long intervals. Dinosaurs. But no movement. No foraging, no calls, just pulsing exhalations. Then one of them inhales sharply, flaring nostrils wide, and the air bends again. This isn't rest. This is territory. You step back slowly. Another dinosaur responds not with emotion, not with a charge, but with a slow subsonic nasal pulse. It's not just air, it's a signal. You're watching a battle, a silent one. The air between the two pulses thickens. You see it now, two massive dinosaurs on opposite ends of the field. Neither moves, but they breathe forcefully, rhythmically, in tones so low you feel them through your ribs. This is not a fight of teeth or claws. It's a vibrational duel. Historians still debate whether such breath-based confrontations ever occurred, or if we're romanticizing the purpose of nasal resonance. But here, it's obvious these creatures are using air the way rams use horns or lions use manes to show dominance. Not through violence, through vibration. And here's your odd modern comparison. Elephants are known to communicate using infrasound, low-frequency rumbles that travel through the ground and can be heard by the feet of other elephants. These dinosaurs. Same principle. Different medium. Nose instead of throat. Territory instead of trumpet. The duel intensifies. Each dinosaur exhales a long, low-frequency tone. The other matches it, adjusting pitch, pushing back like an audio arm wrestle. No violence, not even a growl. The ground shifts minutely with each breath. Loose soil dances. Your own breath falters. You press your back against a tree, trying not to interfere. You wonder what determines the winner. duration, depth, subtlety. And then you realize volume isn't the goal. Precision is. The dinosaur on the left adjusts its tone slightly, creating a pulsing vibration that pulses upward. Not louder, but clearer. You hear it resonate with a crack in a nearby rock. It echoes just once perfectly. The dinosaur on the right exhales a reply stronger but less refined. The sound spills across the clearing unevenly, too broad. The left one adjusts again, short bursts, now 3 in sequence, perfectly spaced. A pause. Then the right one lowers its head. Not in defeat, in acknowledgement. The duel ends. Not a foot moved. Your joke of the day: in the age of dinosaurs, beef was settled by breathing harder and prettier than your rival. You breathe out slowly and shake your head. You've just watched 2 tons of muscle argue using nothing but well-shaped size. One of the herd approaches the center of the clearing, now exhales in a long, relaxed pulse, and the others respond gently. A chorus of soft replies drifts through the trees, low, subtle, but full of agreement. The area was never empty. It was waiting, listening. You notice now how the surrounding stones are arranged not randomly, but with gaps. Channels. Natural amplification spots, as if generations of dinosaurs knew exactly where to stand to make the air carry better. You move closer and place your palm on one of the rocks. It's faintly warm. You feel a residual hum. That's when it hits you. They mark territory not with scent but with breath. Not left behind like a urine-soaked border, but performed. Repeated. Reinforced. A dinosaur steps into one of the circular clearings and exhales a short pattern, low, low, high. Another responds, high, low, low. You start to see the rhythm, the loop, a ritual of acknowledgement. And here's the strange bit. None of these dinosaurs seem distressed or threatened by each other now. The breath duel is over, the rules upheld. All that remains is maintenance territory humming like a throat chakra in the forest's larynx. A juvenile tries to imitate one of the vibrational pulses. It's bad, like a tuba falling downstairs. The adults ignore it. It's trying. Eventually, the juvenile finds a frequency that doesn't echo awkwardly. You think you see a small nod of approval. The lesson here isn't just about sound, it's about control. You sit beside one of the older dinosaurs and match your breathing to theirs. Inhale slow, exhale softer. Listen for feedback from the stones around you. You get nothing. You try again, narrowing your exhale. More nostril, less lungs. Still nothing. Third try. You purse your lips, tilt your head slightly, and let the breath go slow and flat. This time, a low note skips across the surface of the dirt and hits a stone just right. A tiny hollow ping. You grin, then immediately stop grinning because 3 dinosaurs turn to look at you at once. You raise your hands like, sorry, sorry, wrong territory. They exhale in unison. A shared note that seems to mean, as long as you know. You retreat quietly and head back toward the tree line. And as you go, you feel it behind you, not menace, not noise. Just the steady, subtle vibration of a land claimed not by claw or roar, but by perfectly tuned breath. You're descending into a rocky basin, now low, dry, and empty, except for a single boulder planted in its center like a gravestone. The breeze shifts. You stop walking. Because something's humming. Not music, not voice. A tone subtle but persistent, echoing softly across the rock floor. It pulses every few seconds like a heartbeat carved from air. You take a few steps closer. The sound doesn't change. Just hums on. Mid-frequency, low volume. Not quite mechanical, not quite natural. Then you see it, the boulder isn't solid. It's hollowed. Weathered with strange cavities smoothed across the surface like old bone. You step around its side, heart stuttering a little, and you realize what you're looking at. A skull, enormous. Bleached pale. Its crest broken, but enough remains to recognize the long, hollowed nasal cavity that loops backward and arches high before diving deep into the fossilized cranium. Wind rushes through it like air through a flute. It's not a rock that hums. It's an echo. You crouch beside it, careful not to touch. The sound isn't constant. It pulses with the gusts shaped by the structure of the skull's twisted chambers. Every gust plays a slightly different note. You whisper, "You're still talking." Historians have always been fascinated by the function of crests. Like this, were they display features or did they serve acoustic functions? The answer, it turns out, might be both. But this is a memory made of wind. You sit cross-legged and close your eyes. Every shift in the air plays a variation. A long note, then a quick stutter. You imagine the creature alive, resting in a clearing, breathing out through this labyrinth. It would have sounded exactly like this. The land is performing a eulogy through the architecture of its dead. You smile at the thought. And then, of course, the wind shifts. The hum deepens. Your spine vibrates against the stone beneath you. And here's your odd fact of the day. Scientists once replicated a Parasaurolophus nasal crest using a 3D printed model and a leaf blower. The resulting sound? A rich, bass-heavy note that could travel up to a mile even through dense foliage. Now you're hearing the unintentional encore played not by machine but by wind and memory. You open your eyes. A smaller skull rests nearby, partially buried in silt. You hadn't noticed it before. Less intact but still unmistakable. A juvenile. You pause suddenly, unsure what this place is. Graveyard nest site or something stranger, an acoustic anomaly where echoes refuse to die. You whisper, "Do you remember me?" The larger skull hums again, this time a higher pitch. You lean closer, watching the reed-like nasal passage tremble slightly with the air's push. This isn't just noise. The wind wants this to happen. It found the right hole, the perfect bend in bone. And now it's breathing stories. You feel it in your chest again. Not fear, not sadness, just awe. This isn't haunting, it's honoring. You try something silly? You purse your lips and exhale toward the skull, mimicking the tone as best you can. The resulting sound is underwhelming, like a kazoo trying to perform a hymn. And here comes your joke. If a human breathes into a fossil and it answers back, is that paleontology or therapy? You try again. This time a longer breath. It hums. A tiny echo bounces back from inside the skull. For a moment you think it matches your tone. Then the wind answers again. You sit there longer than you should, just breathing with the dead. No one else comes. The air cools. The sun passes directly overhead and turns the skulls into sundials, casting looping shadows across the stone floor. You watch time move across their faces, and you start to notice there's a path worn into the ground, just faint, barely noticeable. Other animals have come here before, maybe to listen, maybe to remember, or maybe just to match the hum. Historians still debate the origin of certain tribal myths in early human settlements. Stories of singing rocks or breathing caves. You wonder how many were just remnants of these places. A boulder that whispered, a cave that moaned when wind passed through an old skull embedded in the wall. You imagine a tribe finding this place, sitting quietly, thinking it alive. You understand why they would. You breathe again, softer now, trying to leave no trace, and then you rise, brushing dust from your knees. You walk past the large skull one last time. The wind calms. No more hum, just bounce. You pause. And then one last pulse, faint high, almost curious. You smile, thanks. The wind doesn't answer, or maybe it already did. You climb the slope out of the basin, feet quiet on loose stone. The skull fades behind you, its shadow swallowed by the rock. You never touch it, but it touched you. You wake to a racket that would make a librarian commit arson. The forest is chirping, squeaking, thumping, and none of it is graceful. You blink through early light, face pressed into soft leaf litter, and sit up just in time to witness the prehistoric equivalent of a daycare riot. Dinosaur infants everywhere. Asamir. Satunumai? Ashishka. Some have crests already forming stubby little tubes like party horns glued to their skulls. Others are fuzzy, downy little proto-feathered muffins tumbling through ferns. They're not hunting, not foraging. They're playing. And it is chaos. but not random chaos. You listen more closely. The sounds aren't roars or shrieks. They're breaths. Nasal bursts, puffs, inhales followed by spiraling exhales. Some long and windy, others tight and staccato. It's like a jazz band, where everyone insists on playing solo all at once. A juvenile lets out a puff puff pause puff. Another answers puff puff pause squeak. You realize what you're seeing. Breath games. These aren't just noisy kids, they're training. Historians still debate whether dinosaur young learned social cues through mimicry, like human infants babbling. But here it's unmistakable. These little monsters are learning to speak through their noses. A particularly plump hatchling inflates its neck with great dramatic flair, then lets out a breath so exaggerated it nearly falls over. Another one copies it but adds a spin. A third joins with a nasal burst that squeaks at the end. It's improv, structured nonsense, musical hide-and-seek. And then something adorable happens. Two of the smallest ones sit nose-to-nose, eyes wide, and begin puffing in perfectly mirrored rhythm. One leads, the other follows. Then they switch. Then again. You've just stumbled into a classroom with no chalk, no teacher, just breath and instinct and sibling rivalry. One older juvenile, clearly more advanced, has taken to wandering between pairs of playing infants, offering unsolicited nasal critiques. You can tell because every time a younger one messes up, the older one sighs dramatically, long, slow, clearly disappointed. Here comes your joke of the day. Prehistoric toddlers invented passive-aggressive sighing long before humans ever rolled their eyes at a group project. You crawl a little closer and settle behind a mossy rock. The game evolves. One hatchling puffs into a tight, hollow log, and the resulting echo sends the others into hysterics. Not laughter exactly, but a cascade of rapid exhale chirps that sound like pure joy. You smile, unable to help it. They're testing resonance, echoes, response. Odd modern fact, baby dolphins experiment with whistle patterns until they develop a signature call, a sort of name. Maybe these dinosaur infants are doing the same. Not names exactly, but sonic fingerprints, breath IDs. A group of three start a new rhythm. Puff, puff, pause. Puff, puff, squeak. Over and over, it becomes a kind of chant, a tiny puff choir. An adult in the distance exhales once flat and steady. Immediately the volume drops. The breath games quiet into gentler mimicry. The infants aren't scolded, they're recalibrated. You wonder how much of this behavior is passed down. Not through genetics, but through repetition. Through watching, listening. The way a human toddler learns what not to say by seeing their mom's eyes twitch over breakfast. One particularly determined infant climbs atop a low root, inflates dramatically, and attempts the same nasal pulse as one of the adults you saw yesterday. It fails gloriously. A farting wheeze escapes its face and the others pause, then squeal in what can only be described as delight. Even the adults sigh just once collectively. The show continues. You sit for a while, hypnotized by the rhythm of their breath play. It's chaotic but not senseless. Every exhale teaches, every puff reacts. They're learning pitch, volume, direction. You even spot one juvenile who clearly favors one nostril like a trumpet player, figuring out their embouchure. Historians often forget to ask how animals practice. Not what they do at maturity, but how they get there. You're watching the fossil records blooper reel, and it's beautiful. One tiny creature climbs onto a sibling and tries a double nostril blow, too ambitious. It tips forward, lands nose first, and lets out an involuntary honk. The others erupt in a breath-flickering chorus that fills the air like boiling water. Another tries to copy the honk. It's worse. And now it's a game. You'd think they were mocking each other, but it's more collaborative. One huffs, another tops it. Not to win, but to build. It's breath as sculpture, or stacking blocks, or jokes. You realize the log echo earlier? That wasn't an accident, it's a stage. They keep returning to it, testing tones, puffing through the hollow again and again, adjusting angle, pitch, airflow. Little musicians, little scientists. One even tries to hum through its nostrils while walking backward. You don't know what the goal is, but you respect the creativity. Here's your odd fact. Some juvenile songbirds go through a babbling phase almost identical to human babies testing sounds until they find the ones that work. Dinosaurs, it seems, were no different. You're watching breath babble evolve into language or whatever passed for it here. The morning warms and one adult finally approaches. The little ones don't scatter. Instead, they gather. The adult exhales a long, low chord. A hush falls. Then, one by one, the infants repeat it, badly. Each puff out of time, out of tune, but earnest. The adult exhales again, steady, patient. The herd's first lesson of the day: listen, then try again. You sit still for the next 10 minutes as the chorus of baby breaths rises and falls. 100 failed notes. 100 better ones. Slowly, the puff choir aligns. Almost. You exhale too, not in imitation, but in solidarity. And if you're honest, it's the first time in years you felt like learning to breathe again. It takes you a moment to realize how far you've come. You followed whispering herds across valleys, breath-synced lovers through the ferns, mimicked streams ducked from predators that hunt by sound. And now, as you climb a rocky ridge beneath a smoldering red sky, you find something new. Something disappointingly human. A small fire crackles inside a cave. You crouch just beyond the entrance, peeking in. The smoke rises in lazy spirals, and the warmth brushes your face like a slow exhale. Shadows flicker along the walls, but it's not the fire that captures your attention. It's the carvings, dozens of them. Scratched deep into the stone, overlapping, layered, an entire mural of confusion. Dinos with swirling nostrils, spiral crests, creatures puffing air in stylized clouds. You recognize some of them. Others are more imaginative. Human figures cower beneath giant snouts. One sticks out a line of dots extending from a dinosaur's head into a human's chest. And here's the twist: every creature in this art is silent. No mouths open, no roaring, just nostrils, always nostrils. You step further in. A group of early humans sits huddled near the fire. Not modern, but not primitive either. Somewhere in between. Their skin is painted with ash. Their eyes follow you, but they don't speak. They breathe, slow. In time. Matched to each other. You realize the fire isn't the main event here, it's the air. One of them lifts a hollow reed, places it to their nose, and exhales. A long, thin tone shimmers through the cave. Not loud, but resonant. A second person answers with a shorter puff. A third plays a fluttering breath like a panicked flute. They're communicating, not with words, with breath. You sit uninvited but not unwelcome. The group watches you with a kind of gentle expectation. You try a breath through your nose, soft, steady. A woman across the fire blinks, then responds with a matching rhythm. It feels ancient. It is ancient. Historians still debate what the earliest forms of human music or language sounded like. But here's the thing: when your world is full of creatures that whisper through their noses, maybe you learn from them. These people didn't invent language. They inhaled it. You glance back at the wall carvings. Some of the spirals resemble the nasal crests you saw on the hadrosaurs. Others twist into exaggerated loops like instruments too elaborate to play. There's one that looks like a dinosaur and a human exhaling into the same shape. Here's your odd fact: some Paleolithic flutes discovered in Europe mimic the calls of birds and possibly even extinct animals. The notion that ancient people listened, copied, and communed with their ecosystem isn't new. But this is more than mimicry. It's reverence. You look down and see a stone bowl filled with fine ash. Someone presses their finger into it and draws a line, curl. A breath path. You get the feeling they've been doing this for a while. Not just these people, but others before them. Generations of quiet observation, of trying to match breath to the forest. One of the elders leans forward and exhales across the ash in the bowl. It scatters gently, forming ripples. A younger child watches, then copies the exhale. The ash moves less smoothly, but it moves. A ritual, a game, a way of saying, remember the breath. You think back to those dinosaur infants learning through puff mistakes, the adults shaping each other's size, the whispered warnings in the underbrush, and now humans doing the same. It makes you laugh softly. The first real voice you've made in hours. And here comes your joke of the day. Before we had language, we probably had opinions, all whispered through our noses at each other like passive-aggressive reptiles. One of the humans smiles at you, just slightly, as if to say, we thought that too. You wonder how many myths were born from this. The breathing rock, the sighing trees, the invisible spirits that spoke only in wind. Maybe they weren't spirits at all. Maybe they were just leftover conversations. Echoes of nostrils, long buried, replayed by wind and curiosity. You point at one of the wall carvings, an image of a dinosaur crest turned skyward, lines curling upward like smoke. You whisper, "Did you hear it?" The oldest one nods once. They didn't just hear the dinosaurs. They misheard them, turned them into legends, gave them names, spirits, gods, and honestly, who could blame them? When a skull hums in the wind, your choices are A, it's physics, B, it's ghosts. And most people back then didn't have option A. You sit in the quiet with them as the fire dies lower. Every few minutes, someone breathes through their nose. A reply, a ripple. You join in, and suddenly, you realize you're not an outsider anymore. You're part of the breath loop, the invisible language that started with creatures who shaped air into identity, into warnings, into lullabies. You smile. The wall hums. Outside, the wind rises. And somewhere in the stone, a skull-shaped hole sings softly, just like it did millions of years before these humans ever noticed. You leave the cave behind before sunrise. The sky hangs low and purple, as if even the light is hesitating. The forest ahead feels different now, not wilder, not quieter, just older, like it knows something it hasn't said out loud. You're walking slower, almost reluctantly. There's a pressure in the air, but not the kind that warns of predators. This is the hush of final pages. You follow a dried riverbed until you see it, a dinosaur alone. Not a juvenile, not a hunter, an old one, massive, crested, its ribs rising and falling like hilltops. It's lying on its side in a patch of morning grass, legs curled beneath a weathered belly, skin slack in the shoulders. There's no herd, no partner, just this one being, breathing. You crouch in the underbrush and wait. Its nostrils flare once. The exhale that follows isn't powerful. It doesn't hum or echo. It doesn't mimic water or carve the wind into melody. It's just a whisper, and it shakes you. Because you've heard all the forms by now, playful puffs, territorial pulses, mating sighs, river, mimicry, silent alarms. But this is a goodbye. Historians still debate whether dinosaurs understood death in any emotional sense. Whether they mourned, grieved, felt time as something other than instinct. But watching this elder creature, its breath shorter now, pauses longer, you suspect they knew something. Something like memory. Its next breath comes slower, hitching in the chest. You see the sides of its spiral crest tremble with the effort of moving air. Odd fact of the day, elephants sometimes linger beside the bones of their dead. They touch the skulls with their trunks, quiet, gentle, as if trying to hear what's still inside. You imagine a young dinosaur might have done the same, returning to a skull like the one in the canyon, pressing its face to the hollow, and breathing in until it remembered the sound. You feel tears start behind your eyes. Silly maybe, but honest. The dinosaur shifts, just slightly, and then another breath. This one different. It curls low into the grass, soft, round, like it's trying to touch every blade. And then, it doesn't inhale again. No flailing, no roar, just stillness. You wait a long time, but you already know. It's gone. And yet the whisper remains. The last exhale lingers in the warm grass. You swear the wind around it slows, holding the shape. And for the first time, you think maybe breath is time. Not just life, not just signal, but story. A story told in pressure, in rhythm, in vapor. You walk to the body slowly, reverently. You sit beside it, unsure what to do. There's no ritual here, no audience, just you and the earth. You exhale. It feels like thanks. You stay there until the wind shifts again. The forest doesn't mourn in noise. It simply adjusts. Birds pick at the edges of silence. Trees offer shade. The breath returns to the system. You stand. And here's your joke of the day, quieter than the rest. They say, never hold your breath. But some breaths are meant to be held just a little longer. You look back one last time before moving on. Not with sadness exactly, with weight. You pass a young tree nearby and place your hand on it. The breeze moves through its leaves like 1,000 tiny sighs. You smile. You'll remember. You walk out of the forest slower than you entered it. Each step quiet, each breath shaped, because now you carry them all. The whispers in the ferns, the clicks in the dark, the sighs of lovers, the chorus of children, the wind inside a skull, and the final breath that moved the grass but not the world. Not yet. But maybe someday someone else will hear it, and they'll breathe back. You've wandered through a world shaped by whispers, not of ghosts or gods, but of lungs, crests, and the quiet urgency of survival. From herds humming through twisted nasal chambers to infants playing puff games beneath their mother's shadows, the story has always been the same: breath is everything. Some dinosaurs shaped the air for love-sighing sonnets through spiral crests. Others mimicked rivers, their nostrils bending tones into camouflage. Some dueled with vibration alone, territory carved into silence by pulse and patience. And in the end, even the oldest among them chose not to roar into the dark, but to let go in one final gentle exhale. You've seen humans try to follow, carving breath lines into cave walls, mimicking the echoes of those long-gone building rituals from whispers they barely understood. And maybe that's all we've ever done: listen to nature breathe and try to answer back. So when you sleep tonight, try it. Inhale slow, let it spiral. Exhale into the room with purpose. And maybe, just maybe, the air will remember you too. The dinosaurs are gone, but their stories aren't written in stone. They're written in breath, and breath travels.